The spirit of creativity lives in all of us. It compels us to move forward.
So tell me, do you love someone?
I paint with colors.
I paint with numbers.
I paint with words.
I sculpt in 3D.
I sculpt in code.
I sculpt young minds to go further.
I design skyscrapers.
I design in mixed reality.
I share ideas.
I share experiences.
I compose symphonies of music.
I compose symphonies of science.
What we create is more than just our work. It is our passion, defining us as individuals and shaping the future we share. Welcome to a world where every person is empowered to achieve more.
So tell me, do you love
Dzień dobry, Warszawa. Welcome to the Build Tour. Thank you. My name is Dave Crawford. I'm a senior program manager at Microsoft, and I'm very excited to be with you here today. We're trying something new with you guys in Warsaw. We have this thing called real-time feedback, where throughout the keynote and a few select sessions, you can use your web browser to thumbs up, thumbs down, write comments on how the sessions are going. So please take a moment to navigate to that site or follow the QR code if you'd like to participate in the live feedback. Okay. So today we're going to talk about Microsoft technologies from the client to the cloud. And I want to start off by giving you a bit of information about the momentum we've had over the past year. Thanks to our focus on reliability, trust, and innovation, over 90% of the largest corporations in the world now trust Microsoft Azure to run their businesses. Software as a service companies also rely heavily on Azure, with Adobe, Autodesk, and Avid targeting creators specifically. And when it comes to Windows, Windows 10 is now the most used version of Windows around the world. We have over 500 million devices running Windows 10, and over 300 million users every single day use Windows for more than 3.5 hours. But probably the thing that I'm the most proud of is that this is the highest rated version of Windows ever. And we're continuing this momentum with the Windows 10 Creators Update, Fall Creators Update coming this fall. We've got a lot of content that we're going to cover in the keynote. It's all very exciting. We're going to go quite quickly, but a lot of this will be covered in sessions later on in more detail, so do stick around. As usual, we love it when you guys tweet, post photos. Please use the hashtag MSBuildTour when you're doing that so we can see all the great things that you're sharing. OK, let's dive straight in. Now, we're investing heavily on making Windows the best dev box you have. We want all your development work to happen on Windows, whether you're building for Windows or for other platforms. So let's take a look firstly at, crazy clicker. It's good. You always need to have something go wrong in the first couple of minutes of your slide deck. It's good luck. OK. Let's go back to here. Or maybe just stand over here and press keys. OK. So firstly, UWP. UWP, simply put, is the place to build for Windows, no matter what language you're targeting. We're going to have some fantastic sessions later on today that go through UWP in more detail, but it's a great way to target every single Windows device. But we know not all of you use Windows to build for Windows. Some of you use Windows to build for other platforms. And we love you guys as well. So let's take a look at those of you who build for the web. Progressive web apps are a fantastic way for you to build reliable, performant, and powerful cross-platform and cross-device apps. We've been working with the W3C to standardize progressive web apps to make it easier for them to run on different devices. It's a fantastic way to get started moving from the web to an app on a device. And my colleague Jeff will be hosting a session this afternoon to go through this in more detail. And we know that some of you like to use other tools when you're building on a Windows device. So last year, we introduced Bash on Ubuntu through the Windows subsystem for Linux. We're now moving this into the store so you can actually download it much easier than before. But we also know that a lot of you guys like to use other distributions when you're doing your Linux work. So we're actually bringing OpenSUSE and Fedora to the Windows Store as well. This now means you have 3 different distros to choose from, so you can pick the one that suits you best. Even better, you can actually run all 3 at the same time, if you want to do that, obviously. And we've not forgotten about C++ developers. We know that many of you write high-performance line of business apps on C++, and we've got some exciting developments there as well. For a start, we're trying to make it more efficient for you to build with C++. So in Visual Studio, projects will now load 17 times faster than they did previously. They also take a 2.8 times smaller memory footprint, and we've added support for CMake as well. We also make sure that we support all the latest standards in C++, as well as all the latest UWP APIs that you can hook into on Windows. We also know that a lot of you like to build apps for Linux on a Windows device, and we're now making this easier for you by adding debugging to Visual C++. This works by leveraging the GCC toolchain on Linux. It's a fantastic way for you to build and test your apps on Windows. And .NET developers, I'm sure there are a lot of you in the room here. We introduced the .NET Standard last year to make it easy for you to bring your code across multiple devices and the cloud. And we've innovated on that again this year with the .NET Standard 2.0. But there's one platform missing from .NET Standard 2.0, and that was UWP. So I'm pleased to announce that we're bringing .NET Standard 2.0 for UWP as well. We've increased API coverage by over 60%, adding 18,000 new members to the framework libraries. You can now have up to 90% of your libraries portable across different devices. And we got some great feedback from you guys. Some of you may write XAML for Xamarin Forms, some of you write XAML for UWP, but you notice that they're slightly different, and that's a little bit frustrating when you're writing both. Xamarin Forms has stack layouts, UWP has stack panels, and there's a bunch of other small differences like that as well. So we heard your feedback, and we're going to be converging these together into one single standard that we call XAML Standard 1.0. This is currently in specification phase. You can go to GitHub by pulling the aka.ms link, and we would like you guys to contribute to that as well. We want to make sure that we build what you guys want, because we love you guys, we want you to love us as well. This now means that with XAML Standard and .NET Standard, you have one code base that you can leverage over multiple different endpoints. With .NET Standard, it'll reach across devices and the cloud, and with XAML Standard, you have one concise, simple language that runs on all of your devices. And speaking of cross-platform development, many of you may use Xamarin here, and we've been investing significantly in Xamarin and Visual Studio to make it easier for you guys to target different platforms. So let's take a look at a little demo of the new Xamarin Live Player. So over here, I have an iPhone, and I'm running an app called the Xamarin Live Player. And we're going to show a little demo of how easy it is to pair this to Visual Studio. So I'm going to go into Visual Studio here. If I go into the Xamarin Live Player tools here, I can easily pair my iPhone device to Visual Studio just by scanning a QR code. Just to prove this is real, I can actually see you guys. Hi. So we hold it over the screen, and it's a QR code, so it's super quick. And you see the iPhone says it's now connected to Visual Studio. This now means that we can actually run our app through Visual Studio on our iPhone just by picking it from the list of devices at the top here. So when I click play, it'll take just a moment to build. And you can see here that this app that I was building is now running directly on my iPhone. I can scroll it, interact with it, just as you'd expect to do so. But we know that for a lot of you who are building UI, it's a bit tedious having to hit F5 every time you change a color or add a new text field in or something like that. So we've introduced a new feature called Live Run from Current View. Let's take a look at that. So when I do Live Run from Current View, you'll see it very quickly pushes my UI to my iPhone device. But what's great about this is I can now edit in real time. So I'm going to drag a header into my app and drop that in. And you'll see in just a couple of seconds, Xamarin Live View updates on my iPhone to bring in those changes directly, much faster than hitting F5. I can also do this with the code. So hello is to English. So let's change this to dzień dobry. And I hope I've spelt that right. And then I'm also going to change the background color of my header to be orange. And you'll see that this updates on the phone instantly. It's super fast and a very powerful way of creating cross-platform apps. OK. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing with the Windows Store. I almost pressed the clicker then. We've been investing heavily in awareness. We now have over 500 million visitors to the Windows Store every single month. We've got a 5 times increase in promotions that happen to drive traffic to your apps in the store. We've also been working hard to give you multiple different ways to monetize your app. This helps you find something that works best for you and your users, whether it's subscriptions, or it's downloadable bundles, or pre-orders. We've also converged the Xbox Store and the Windows Store to give users one single place to find all of your content. And we've not forgotten about the developer experience either. That's critical to you guys to make sure you have fantastic apps in the store. So we've added better support for flighting, automation, reporting, and stack traces as well. But this is all about you. We want to say thank you for the hard work that you guys do to put such fantastic apps into the store. It's really humbling to see such great work from you guys. And there's 2 apps that I particularly want to call out from Poland, Audioteka and Tuba.fm, 2 fantastic apps in the store. If you haven't tried them yet, go download them. They're really great apps. And thank you so much for building on Windows. Woo! And it's not just consumer apps that are having success in the store. SAP have brought their digital boardroom, which runs on the Microsoft Surface Hub, which is that huge 84-inch display you may have seen. They're seeing fantastic traction since they put their app in the store. And it's not just SAP that are seeing fantastic opportunity with the store. Incredibly large companies like Apple see fantastic opportunity in the Windows Store. I'm pleased to announce that Apple will be bringing iTunes to the store by the end of the year. And this is the full version of iTunes. You'll be able to manage your iPhone and all those kinds of things you can currently do with Apple right now. One particular success story I'd like to talk about is Autodesk Sketchbook. This is a really powerful creative app, and Autodesk is seeing the fastest growth on Windows than any other platform right now. They're seeing 35% month-on-month growth of subscriptions since they introduced it. Really, really fantastic growth from those guys. And it's not just our third-party partners who are building apps for the Windows Store. We are also doing it ourselves. So I'm going to give you a little demo of a small app we have called Office 365 that we brought to the Windows Store through the desktop bridge. OK, you ready for it? This is the demo. This is actually running. First of all, this is a Windows laptop, which is Surface laptop, which is a new device that was launched recently. But it's running Windows 10s, so it can only run store apps. And just to prove that this is actually running on this device, I'm going to quit my PowerPoint deck for the second time today. I'm going to look in Task Manager. And you can see here that PowerPoint is running in the Windows Apps directory, not in Program Files Office. This is a Windows app downloaded from the Windows Store, yet still a fully capable and fully powerful app. OK. Next, I'm going to talk to you about something that's really new and exciting, and we call it the Microsoft Graph. With the Microsoft Graph, you now have access to or knowledge of all of the user's devices, content, and their location as well to a degree. It allows you to bring together your app so it can be at the surface at the right place at the right time on the right device. And we do this using a set of SDKs we call the Project Rome SDKs. We announced at Build last year that these will be available on Windows and Android, and this year we announced they're also available on iOS. So these now work across all the 3 major mobile platforms. In Windows, we've implemented the Project Rome APIs with something we call the timeline. And I'm going to give you a quick example of what the timeline is now. So here I am on my Windows desktop. When I go into the task switcher view, it'll bring up the standard task switcher, but you'll see there's now cards for the tasks and apps I've been working on recently. I can scroll back through time and see what I've been doing on previous days. I can also search as well. So I've been working on a kitchen remodel, so I'm just going to search for kitchen. It brings back all the things related to that project. I can tap it, PowerPoint loads, and brings me in exactly where I left off. Really, really powerful way of helping you continue where you were. But let's say I leave the office and I want to continue this at home. When I get home, I open my Surface Book, and Cortana pops up and says, hey, do you want to continue that PowerPoint deck you were working on? I give it a tap. PowerPoint opens exactly where I left off. And I can just keep working. Really, really simple, but really, really powerful. Now, contrary to people's popular belief, working at Microsoft isn't just all about PowerPoint. Sometimes we like to read the news as well. So let's say I was in the news app reading an article on MSN News, but then I need to leave the house for some reason. When I go over to my phone, in this case an iPhone, Cortana will toast me and say, do you want to keep reading the article? When I tap on it, she takes me to the timeline. For the timeline view, I can tap on that and get taken straight into the MSN News app. But the really powerful thing here that I want to underline for you guys is that if I didn't have that app installed, when I tapped on the timeline, Cortana would take me straight into the iOS App Store to download that app. It's a super powerful way to make sure your app is installed on as many devices as possible by leveraging the power of the Microsoft Graph. How many of you have ever had to email yourself a bit of text, or email yourself an image or a web link or something, just so you can use it on a different device? You've at least got one in the room. It's very frustrating, it's time-wasting, and there must be a better way of doing it. So we built something that we call the cloud-powered clipboard. Let's take a look at how that works. So here I am again in my kitchen remodel, and there's a list of stores that I want to go and investigate. So I'm going to copy this to my clipboard and then go to my mobile device and paste it into Google Maps. In this case, I've got a Samsung device. Using the SwiftKey keyboard, which is available on iOS and Android, I can go to the pasteboard and paste from the cloud-powered clipboard directly into Google Maps, which will then help me navigate. Windows loves all of your devices, and your users will love you even more if your apps will work across every device that they have. I'd like to welcome Larry Lieberman and Etienne Magraf onto the stage to talk about Azure.
Thanks, Dave. Now, Dave spent some time showing you about how you can use the Microsoft Graph to create rich experiences that flow with your user from device to device. But Microsoft Graph has been around for a little while. It started when we started to think to ourselves about all the data that enterprises have trapped inside of Office 365, all your users' data. And we wanted to give developers a very quick and easy way to extend that data and provide their own experiences. The Microsoft Graph is one single, simple set of RESTful API endpoints that you can leverage to access the universe of data that your users have in Office 365, Skype for Business, Microsoft Dynamics even, as well as now Microsoft Teams. So think about the power of this, because you can build experiences that access all that data and give users experiences that are unique to the scenarios that you specifically care about. We're going to take a look at how one of our partners did this, leverage these experiences to create very impactful sales CRM experiences, a company called Tact. And to show us, Etienne is here to show us and take us through that.
Thank you, Larry. So Tact is a company on a mission to make enterprise software more human-friendly. They use artificial intelligence and the Microsoft Graph to improve CRM and sales experiences. They provide a smart assistant inside of Microsoft Teams. So here you can see I'm in Teams, and Tact, just by using the Bing Knowledge Graph, notice that there is an alert on an account that I manage, and send that to me here using a proactive message. I can expand this, and I can see there is someone I should know about. And to know more about this person and all the interaction that we had inside of my team, I can click here on this button, and it's using Microsoft Graph to get information from Office 365. So I can see all the interaction that we had, and also we run a sentiment analysis on this using cognitive services. You can see up to now, the interaction went pretty well. And so I think I should know more about this person. I can search for her on LinkedIn, And this is going to do a search, a query there, and show me all the results that match my request. So I can go here, and I can try to find the right one, which is the CMO here. And I can ask TAC to connect to this person on LinkedIn. And at the same time, it's going to create a lead inside of Dynamics. So I can click here and see this lead. TAC provides a custom tab inside of Microsoft Teams. I can have all the information I need here and see everything. Going back to the conversation, I can now, so now I would really like to be able to talk with everyone in my company that had interaction with this person. And to do this, I can click on Top Collaborators, and it's going to use the Microsoft Graph to know who had interactions with this person in the past. And which is really great here is that we can schedule a meeting with all these persons at a specific time. So I'm going to go to my calendar here. And so I think this is a pretty good match for me. So I'm going to click on this button. And it's going to add this inside my calendar, but also the other calendar as well. I'm going to wait for a few seconds for it to show up here. And it's on another week, so I have to go there, 1 week on the right. And normally, it should be there. So it appeared here. So now, let's have a quick look at the code we had to write for this. It should always look cool when you write code. So here, I'm in Visual Studio Code. It's in TypeScript. And you can see that if you remember, like we used a query in Microsoft Graph to access all the interaction we had with this person. This is done here with a simple REST API request, which is just there. Then, when we have the answer for this, we run a sentiment analysis, which is as easy as this. It's also only one query, one request to a simple REST API here on Cognitive Services. When we get everything, we just send that back to Teams, and everything is working properly. Larry, back to you.
Thanks, Etienne. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about Azure now. Now, as you probably are aware, Azure is available in 34 different regions around the world. This becomes really important as you think about the performance and scalability of your application that you may want to distribute globally. It's also important when you think about having to meet the regulatory requirements in a variety of different countries. Sometimes it's necessary to have your application reside and operate within the confines of that country. We've also announced 6 more regional data centers. This now means that Azure will have more data centers than either Amazon or Google combined. One thing that's been a focus for Microsoft since the very start with the public Azure cloud has been creating a trusted environment. When you think about the enormous amount of enterprise data and personal data of end users that you may be leveraging in your application experience, it's critical that you trust the cloud. So Azure's reliance on trust, our dependency, our focus on building a trusted cloud has resulted in more certifications than any other cloud provider out there, 53. Clear indication that this is something that we focus on extensively. Obviously, the cloud enables us to roll out innovation at a rate faster than other types of software development. It's something that we all struggle with. I know just at Microsoft itself, every 3 months, new features roll out on Azure, and we're all struggling to figure out what's new, what's different, how's it changed, has an entire namespace changed, and so forth. But it's not just about innovation, and we just talked a little bit about trust. It's not just about trust either. All those features are great. However, the most important thing is focusing on what it is developers are actually trying to accomplish. And so we spend a lot of time listening to developers like yourself about what it is you want to do with the cloud and how you like to do it. And that's been our focus in adding new features and functionality to Azure, actually solving those real-world problems. To walk us through that a little bit about the new features of Azure that do solve problems people have asked for, Etienne is going to come back here and walk us through that.
So here, I'm in the Azure portal that you all know and love. As you can see, I've created a specific dashboard just for me for my visitor app, which is already loaded here. I have everything I need there. I have the resources on the right. I have everything for my DTUs. I can see everything live and running there. And I even pinned here my application inside application map. So we've noticed that you developers and us developers really love to use the command line interface. This is why we released CLI, an Azure CLI on Python recently, and we also released inside of the Azure portal a web CLI that you can use right there. So it's a really fully functional one. I can, for instance, say uname-v, and you're going to see that it's running on Ubuntu. I can do ls, as you can see here in the log, and I can, of course, use Azure commands. So I can go az, I can list my VMs, VM list. It's going to take some seconds. And you will see that it's not something that I can easily read as a human being. So I can add more outputs there, -- output, and I can format this as a table, which is going to be really more easy to read. If you have a long list here, you can also use all the bash commands that you know, such as grep, to filter inside of it. So I can say grep on Europe, and here I only have one line, but you see the point. You can search for it really easily inside of this list. So this is working on the portal, but it's also working now on the phone. So I have the Azure mobile app here, which is using the same API as the dashboard does, and I can have access to all my resources. I can go inside of it, for instance, here, the visitor's web app, and I have everything I need, the graphs. I can restart my app. I can do everything that you would expect. I also have access to the Cloud Shell here that you can use. So you can now start VM or stop it, even if you're at a barbecue. Going back here in the portal, so a few minutes before going on stage, I noticed that I'm having too much errors. Like here, I have 3.2% of error, which is a big too much for me. So I can expand this application map, and when I click on this component, I have no details here on the right showing me the most common errors that happened on these production environments. I'm not really worried about the fail request. I'm more worried about this, the index out of range exception. If I click on it, I have some detail, and I have access to a link here that's going to show up, in which I will have a debug snapshot. So this is basically showing me really quickly inside of the website, inside of the portal, where the error is happening. I have the cold stack, and I can see this is this function, and I can have a deeper look at it. If I want to really debug what's happening there, because it's really hard on a production environment, if you don't want to block the environment and add a breakpoint there, you can download the snapshots and then load it inside of Visual Studio, which I already did here. So you can see you have more information and you have more detail, but what's really interesting is this. I can click on debug with manage only, and this is going to show me, like to put me in a debug state as if I was debugging on the production environment. I have access to variables. So here you can see that there is an array of strings, of one string, and I'm trying to access 2 elements in there, which is why it's failing. There's one last thing we announced and we added to the Azure portal. It's the Security Center. So Larry talked to you about trust. And for you to be able to trust your production environments, you have to make sure that it's secured and you respect all the security rules. So we are getting some for you here, like updating your firewall or using encryption for the disks and everything like this. And you also have reports for attacks that might have happened on your environment. So I can click on VM1, which has 16 alerts. That's a lot. I have a summary here as a graph, and I can even go into detail, and I can see that maybe I had a brute force attack on my environment. So you can use this and be more sure that your environment is secure. Larry, back to you.
Thanks, Etienne. Pretty exciting stuff. Now, as we think about the universe of the services available on Azure, there's a large amount of functionality available at your fingertips. Many people start out using Azure or using any public cloud by simply moving a virtual machine into the cloud, that giving them the ability to no longer have to worry about physical hardware. But more and more, developers are asking us for more advanced offerings, more advanced workloads, like web servers, IoT development, identity management, databases. Oftentimes, this makes it much easier for them to leverage these services online because they no longer have to think about the operating system. I'm going to talk through a number of those services through the rest of my time up here today. We're going to start off talking about data. Now, as I mentioned before, many of the most compelling, interesting, and important applications leverage enormous amounts of data. And so it's more important than ever before to understand the offerings provided by the cloud. Many of the developers that we talk to have told us that they want to leverage the database solutions that they're familiar with, that they like to use. And we are all about addressing the needs of developers. We're a developer-focused company. And so the other thing that we hear from developers is that they want to be able to continue to use those database services as they migrate from their own hosted solutions to cloud-hosted solutions. And they want to do it with zero downtime. So how are we doing? What are we doing to help you do that? First of all, earlier this year, we announced SQL Server 2017, a new version of SQL Server, more intelligent, faster, more durable than any other release that we've had before. It has a new adaptive query processing engine that radically accelerates performance. Not only that, we released it simultaneously on Windows and Linux, as well as on Docker container-based solutions. Also new in this release, a series of machine learning offerings in database so that you can perform advanced R and Python model development directly in the database itself. SQL Server is unique among databases available out there because it's not only available on-premise, it's also available as a service, as a platform as a service in the cloud on Azure, the Azure SQL database. When you move to a service-based version of SQL Server, you no longer have to worry about things like backup or scalability or failover or reliability because the service takes care of that for you. And you get the ability to spin up new databases in as little as 60 seconds. Obviously, if we have both these offerings, people want a way to get from one to the other. So this year, we've announced the Azure Database Migration Service, a very simple, easy-to-use set of offerings that enable you to bring an existing on-premise database and post it to the cloud with almost no code or data changes at all. And it's not just available for SQL Server, it's also available for other offerings like Oracle. As I mentioned, we know that developers want to use the databases that they're familiar with. And so this year, we announced Postgres and MySQL both running as native Azure services. This gets you the high availability and security that I was just talking about, and the ability to elastically scale up or down with no downtime at all. The best thing here is that it's 100% compatible with all existing MySQL and Postgres drivers, libraries, and tools. And so this is delivering on that request for developers to be able to use the databases that they're familiar with. Now, you can use the native tools, but you can also use new tools like the Azure command line we were just talking about here. And so this is an example of the command line in the portal being used with to restore a Postgres database. Now, as you begin to think about reaching more users globally with your applications, it becomes more important than ever to think about how you scale not just the application, but the data. And this has actually been a rather complicated thing in the past. So this year, just last month, we announced the new Azure Cosmos Database Service, providing turnkey horizontal scale-out and global millisecond response times. And so this is guaranteed millisecond response times and uptime, something no one else is providing. It's the first globally distributed multi-model database service. And by multi-model, I mean that you get to pick the type of actual data model that you're using for your database, and then you can choose what types of APIs you use to access that data. Globally distributed means that the data will be where your users are, and so they'll be able to get lightning fast performance. And this is all handled automatically in the background by the Cosmos Database Service. As I said, though, we're providing guaranteed comprehensive SLAs, not just around availability, but around performance, throughput, and latency, and consistency. Not only that, you can use Azure Analytics to actually monitor that yourself. So you're able to go in and see exactly, is it meeting the SLA? The last thing I want to note, and this is really important to note, Cosmos has a new pricing model so that you only pay for the storage and performance throughput that you're leveraging. This completely and radically changes the economics of deploying a new data solution to the cloud. Let's move on from data and talk about compute. One of the things that developers have been continually asking us is, how do I modernize my cloud application? And by modernize, I mean move to one of the new application models, like a container-based model, or leverage new exciting technologies like serverless technologies. Azure's very focused on delivering a variety of ways for you to leverage microservices in your new applications, but also in your existing applications. We've talked a lot about this in the last year or so, how Service Fabric, which is the microservices framework on which all of our own services are built, is now available to you to use, not just in the cloud, but also locally, not just on Windows, but on Linux. Service Fabric is available widely, but we know developers also want to use other container solutions, like Docker. And we provide you the ability to use Docker containers across almost all of our application services, like web applications and our batch service. Using the Azure Container Service, you can deploy simplified orchestration engines, like Kubernetes, that make it much easier to deploy a solution that has integrated failover and reliability across your container offerings. We think that Azure is by far the most flexible offering out there when it comes to containers. We're making it even easier. Last month, we announced new container support in Visual Studio directly with integrated Docker tooling. This means that you can create and leverage containers in the context of building your application and testing it directly in Visual Studio. And it also includes end-to-end support for many of the DevOps practices, like continuous integration and continuous deployment, that we know people need to leverage today. We're going to have a session later today, I think immediately following the keynote, actually, focused on these new tools and how to use them. Now, serverless is huge, as you may or may not be aware. The ability to write small pieces of event-driven code that execute on demand. The really compelling thing here is you're only charged for the execution of this code. It may be sitting there idle. You don't have to pay for that. When it gets executed based on some sort of trigger, then you get charged for that operation. We've got hundreds of different types of sources of events that we can leverage in creating this serverless code. A number of them listed here. Things like a standard HTTP request, or a timer, or change in storage if you have a file copied to a storage location, or even a CRM update. There are a number of different engines for running serverless code in Azure. The main one is Azure Functions. This is where you can write that code both in the portal itself, and now, as of last month, we have new compelling tooling that enables you to write serverless functions locally in Visual Studio, deploy and debug them locally on your local machine, making it much more easy to integrate things like continuous integration and continuous deployment. We also now have full support for Application Insights, our analytics service, for Azure Functions. And we have a whole session on serverless that we're going to be talking about this later today because it is so important. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Azure Logic Apps. Not only can you run code in this serverless fashion, you can also run on-demand serverless workflows. So if you have a workflow from Office 365 or Dynamics or even Salesforce that you want to plug into, there are connectors that enable you to add functionality directly to those workflows without having to think at all about servers, deployment, backup, scalability, etc. Again, later today, more on serverless. Now, as I go back to what have developers told us, from the start, we've heard people say, there are just some circumstances in which I cannot put my application in the cloud. Maybe it has to do with connectivity problem. Maybe it has to do with regulatory compliance. And we've addressed a lot of those. But we know that people still have instances in which they need to run things locally. So we created Azure Stack. It's a full extension of Azure that runs on-premise. And what that means is you get access to the exact same set of programming models, the exact same execution environment that you have in the cloud, making it radically simpler for folks to build for the cloud and deploy both in the cloud and locally and get the benefits necessary for their particular scenario. And so some of those scenarios here we talked about just briefly being disconnected or meeting regulatory requirements. And then I mentioned the fact that this gets you the ability to have that same programming model, both in the cloud as well as locally. Carnival Cruises is a great example of this. For a long time, Carnival has leveraged the Azure cloud to manage their cruise ships and the entire operation of their cruise ships. But there are certainly times when a cruise ship at sea, perhaps during a storm, simply cannot connect to the cloud for a variety of reasons. And because of that fact, Carnival has now implemented Azure Stack on their cruise ships for their onboard systems. They're able to share all the application logic, both from the ship to the cloud, and have it synchronize automatically when they're connected. Last but not least, I want to talk about artificial intelligence, another critically important area as we talk about intelligent applications. We have an entire session on this later today. Highly recommend that you attend that. You know, artificial intelligence has come about in the last few years because of the convergence of a number of different factors: enormous computing power in the cloud, enormous amount of data being manipulated by end users, as well as the development of new powerful algorithms. All of these are supported by Microsoft. So we have the Microsoft Cloud, we have the Microsoft Graph for a lot of this data, and that's led to a tremendous amount of artificial intelligence innovation. But we think it's still, most developers tell us, it's still too hard to build complex solutions with machine learning. And because of that, we've had a huge focus in our company on bringing artificial intelligence to every developer. The way we've done that is by a focus on what we've called cognitive services. And over the last 2 years, we've steadily rolled out more of these. Simple, RESTful API endpoints. And you saw one earlier as Etienne showed you the text analytics service where he was getting a sentiment score. That's artificial intelligence. One API call. And here you'll see a large number of services that we provide. Some of the most interesting and compelling artificial intelligence scenarios like computer vision, face recognition, emotion detection, text analysis, and linguistic analysis. These are all available in a real easy way. Developers have also told us, however, they want to be able to extend those models so that, for example, you could have a food recognizer app that recognizes hot dogs, or so forth, and so on. And so to build those models yourself, you need the ability to customize these services. And recently at Build, we announced a new custom vision service, as well as custom language understanding and custom speech. And you'll see we're continuing to extend these. This is a huge focus for Microsoft, bringing the power of artificial intelligence to the average developer globally. You can experiment with and take a look at some of our new cognitive services offerings on the Cognitive Services Labs page. But the power of AI doesn't just come from the cognitive services. Obviously, there is an enormous amount of other infrastructure behind this, including the data platform and the other infrastructure pieces that we talked about. GPU is a really interesting thing here. We have online GPU support now. As well as the cognitive services and the bot service to create compelling conversational user interfaces. Very interesting these days, and the tooling behind that. All key pieces of how we are listening to what our developers are asking for and focusing on that as we create new service features. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Larry. So this is probably my favorite part. I'm very excited to talk to you about design and mixed reality. If you may remember when we first launched Windows Phone 7 and Windows 8, we introduced a new design language back then. It was this authentically digital, flat design language that worked very well on two-dimensional screens. You may remember it as a tile interface. But now we need to evolve that. If you think about how our experiences have changed, we now use devices that have no screen, like voice assistants. We use our screens of varying different sizes that we carry around with us or we sit at our desks. But now we also have a whole new category of devices, which are mixed reality and virtual reality devices. And this flat design doesn't work fantastically in those experiences. So we've created a new design language to bring together all these experiences into one cohesive whole. And we call this Fluent Design. Let's take a little look at this video. Pretty cool, right? So this is our new design language that you'll start to see across more and more of our devices and platforms. And it's something that you guys can take advantage of. There's fantastic guidance on MSDN, and Shen will be talking a little bit more later on about how you can start to bring some of these elements into your apps. Now, as I mentioned, we now have a whole family of different devices, including new mixed reality devices, whether they are occluded headsets from third parties like Lenovo, HP, and Asus, or whether there are mixed reality device HoloLens, which you may know. You may think it's quite hard to build a great mixed reality app, but actually, it's more simple than you may think. So I'm going to invite my colleague Vlad on stage, and we're going to take you through how easy it is to build a demo with mixed reality. Hey, Vlad. OK. So one of the feedback we get from people quite often is it's actually the hardest thing is building a 3D asset in the first place without knowing Maya or 3D Studio Max or something. Well, the good news is we have a tool we brought into the Creators Update called Paint 3D, which makes it super easy for you to create 3D objects. We're going to save a bit of time and use an object that's found in the Remix 3D community, which is part of Paint 3D. So Vlad just brought up Janusz onto our canvas. And he's now going to export him as an FBX file. And FBX is a very common file format for 3D projects. So with that, he's just saved that to his hard disk. We've created a project in Unity, which we're going to use to host our 3D model. So Vlad's going to drag Janusz onto the stage and put him on there. And the other thing we have added to this project is the Vuforia SDK. And Vuforia is a super easy to use augmented reality SDK. It's literally super easy to bring into a project. And now we're actually going to export this as a UWP project so we can put it into the store. So we actually, to save a bit of time, already have this open in Visual Studio. And because this is a UWP project, even though it's mixed reality, we can bring in UWP APIs. So here we're bringing in some speech recognition. When Vlad says jump, Janusz will jump. And when he says stop, he will stop jumping. Super simple to do this, but yet super powerful. So again, to save time, we've pre-compiled this. So let's have a look at how this works. So Vlad's got a marker, which is just a printed piece of paper that Vuforia knows to use to place Janusz on. You can see when he holds it in front of the camera, Janusz sticks to that piece of paper as he moves it around. Vlad can say jump. Jump. And Janusz will start jumping. And he can say stop. Stop. And he stops. Very, very simple to build an augmented reality app with Windows. Now, because this is a Windows app, it will run on multiple devices, such as the HoloLens. Now, we did want to do a live stage demo of HoloLens for you, but it can be a little bit tricky to get the video just right. So we pre-recorded this last night. So I'm just going to talk you through how this works on HoloLens. So this is this area of the stage from yesterday, and Vlad's running the app on the HoloLens device. He initiates spatial mapping, and HoloLens will scan the floor and walls to figure out where they are.
Spatial mapping.
You can see the triangles will start to appear on the floor as it figures out where things are. Now when Vlad taps on Janusz, he will drop to the floor, but he won't fall through it because HoloLens knows where the surfaces are. He can now say jump.
Jump.
And the UWP API will fire and make Janusz start jumping. It's fantastically easy to build an app that goes cross-platform with mixed reality. We have one more demo to show you. And this time, we're talking about a demo that we can run on a VR headset. So let's take a little look at that. So these are a whole new set of devices that our partners are bringing to market. These are occluded VR headsets. They have cameras in them to map the world around them, so they don't need cameras on sticks, which is fantastic. And some of the most popular content we see people running on these devices are 360 videos, so much so that we even have a whole section for them in the movies and TV app that you can play with. We have a fantastic partner called Magix, who build an app called Movie Edit Pro. And this, you can edit two-dimensional videos, but they've also extended it to edit 360 videos. And wouldn't it be better to be editing a 360 video in 3 dimensions? They're currently working on an addition to the app where you can actually run this editing experience inside a VR headset. So Vlad's now going to launch the VR portal and run the app inside it. And again, this is a live demo. So you see Vlad's putting it on. It's got all the head tracking that's happening there. And when we go into the app, you will see 4 different spheres that represent the different 3D videos, 360 videos that we have in our app. Here we go. We're going to pick the one with the rabbit and the alien, which is the second video along. And when we launch this, we get put straight into this video. Now, this video is about a bunny rabbit that gets kidnapped by aliens. And it's quite a fun video. But it's got like an intro, which is a little bit slow. So Vlad's going to go into a mode where he can scrub through the video. You'll notice that it brings the view in. This is so he doesn't get motion sick as he's scrubbing time and moving around. So he's going to get to the point where it gets most excited when the aliens arrive, and he's going to crop the video here. And to do that, he's using an Xbox controller. He's going to bring up a palette of tools and pick up the cutting tool. Then he's simply going to snip that sphere in half to trim the video. And now we don't need the first part of the video anymore, so Vlad's just going to delete that. And now our video will continue from the most exciting point in the movie. This is a really cool app. We can't wait for it to appear in the store, and I hope you guys play with it as soon as it's available. Thanks, Vlad. So as I mentioned, our partners are building all kinds of devices to work with Windows Mixed Reality. We also will be releasing 2 new handsets to help you navigate these mixed reality worlds. You can currently pre-order the Acer headset and the motion controllers for $299 in the US. We'll be bringing them out to the rest of the world as soon as we possibly can. So we talked about a lot of things today. If there was 5 takeaway things I would want to give you, the first one is to look at the new APIs we have available in UWP and modernize your app with them. Take a look at the new .NET 2.0 standard and the XAML standard 1.0 and contribute to them. Again, we really value your feedback. Also look at the different ways you can bring your apps to the Windows Store, whether it's as a UWP, as a desktop bridge app, or as a progressive web app. Get an Azure subscription, and also try out those cognitive services because they are pretty amazing. So we've got a lot of content that we're going to be covering today, many sessions throughout the day. We encourage you to stay for them all because they're going to be super fun and super interesting as well. I don't really know. Okay. I'm going to...
Hello, everyone. How are you? How are you? Hello. Wow. How's everyone doing today? Yes. Now, my name is Mr. Hoot, and Dave has given you an absolutely fantastic keynote, but I'm just going to need to interrupt real quick with an important announcement, and that is the Day 2 workshop tomorrow, which is going to be the most awesome thing ever. So what's going on at this workshop is we're going to have a ton of different tracks and technologies that you can explore. PWA, Centennial, Xamarin, Azure, virtual reality. We'll have tutorials on all of this. They'll be hands-on. You'll be able to try out all the things that you've learned here today in all the different sessions. It's going to be really, really great. Here's an example of just some of the stuff we're going to have. Well, as you can see, lots of content. But what's even better than all of this stuff is that all of the speakers, lots of MVPs, myself, Mr. Hoot, will be there to help you and provide one-on-one guidance. You can ask questions. You can network. You can talk about whatever you want. It's going to be a really, really fantastic opportunity. And we have a ton of people registered already, but there is room for more. I want to see everybody there. So after this, what you're going to need to do is just go to the registration desk, say that Mr. Hoot sent you to come over and sign up for Day 2, and then I will see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Back to you, Dave.
Wow, thank you for that. The Day 2 sessions have got some fantastic content, and like Mr. Hoot said, you can get some great one-on-one time with MVPs and Microsoft employees as well. Now, before I was rudely interrupted, this is what the agenda for the rest of the day looks like. I'm going to ask that you guys stay in your seats because we're going to go straight into the Azure session next. And as Mr. Hoot said, please register for the workshops tomorrow. There's some very fascinating content, and it's a great chance to learn some new skills. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the build. Cheers.